And we are reading from the 80th chapter, 10th canto, verses 10 and 11. So I'll start off with some invocations, and then we'll go right into the verse, and then we'll share some thoughts and realizations, and we'll open it up for discussion and any comments or questions. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Agyantimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Vanchakalpa tarubhasya kripa sindhubhyev cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Okay, so I'm really happy again to be here and grateful to be here with all of you. We'll dive into these two verses that are on our agenda for today, Srimad Bhagavatam class, verses 10 and 11. Tam upahi mahabhaga sadhunam cha parayanam dasyatri dravinam buri siddhate te katumbine. So the word by word, and then the translation for this verse. Tam, him. Upaihi, approach. Mahabhaga, O fortunate one. Sadhunam, of saintly devotees. Cha, and. Parayanam, the ultimate shelter. Dasyati, he will give. Dravinam, wealth. Buri, plentiful. Siddhate, suffering. Te, to you. Kutumbine, who are maintaining a family. Translation. O fortunate one, please approach him, the shelter, and this is Sudama's wife speaking to Sudama. We're in this chapter of 80, this past time. And she's saying, O fortunate one, please approach him, the real shelter of all saints. He will certainly give abundant wealth to such a suffering householder as you. One more time. O fortunate one, please approach him, the real shelter of all saints. He will certainly give abundant wealth to such a suffering householder as you. Verse 11. We'll go straight to the translation for this. So Lord Krishna is now the ruler of the Bhojas, Vrishnis, and Andakas, and is staying at Dwarka. Since he gives even his own self to anyone who simply remembers his lotus feet, what doubt is there that he, the spiritual master of the universe, will bestow upon his sincere worshiper prosperity and material enjoyment, which are not even very desirable? One more time. Lord Krishna is now the ruler of the Bhojas, the Vrishnis, and Andakas, and he's staying at Dwarka. Since he gives his own self to anyone who simply remembers his lotus feet, what doubt is there that he, the spiritual master of the universe, will bestow upon his sincere worshiper prosperity and material enjoyment, which are not even very desirable? Purport. The Brahmana's wife, Sudama's wife, here implies that since Lord Krishna is the ruler of the Bhojas, Vrishnis, and Andakas, if these opulent rulers merely acknowledge Sudama as the personal friend of Krishna's, they could give him everything he required. In this connection, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments that since Lord Krishna had at this point put aside his weapons, he no longer traveled outside his own capital of Dwarka. Thus, Srila Prabhupada writes in Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, quote, The Brahmana's wife said, I have heard that he never leaves his capital city, Dwarka. He's living there without outside engagements. As mentioned here, material wealth and sense gratification is not very desirable. The reason for this is that in the long run, they give no real satisfaction. Still, Sudama's wife thought, even if Sudama went to Dwarka and simply remained silent before the Lord, he would certainly give him abundant wealth, as well as shelter at his lotus feet, which is Sudama's real objective. I'll read this last paragraph one more time. Very powerful. As mentioned here, material wealth and sense gratification are not very desirable. The reason for this is that in the long run, they give no real satisfaction. Still, Sudama's wife thought even if Sudama went to Dwarka and simply remained silent before the Lord, he will certainly give him abundant wealth, as well as shelter at his lotus feet, which is Sudama's real objective. Okay, Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to the Bhakti Center morning class. It's always a pleasure to be here with all of you at the feet of Radha Muralidhar, Shri Radha Muralidhar, Shri Gaurachandra, Mahaprabhu, Nrsingadev, and Srila Prabhupada. I'm honored to be here and to be with all of you. Just looking around the room really quickly as well. Thank you all for being here on this, again, special day of Thanksgiving. I want to share a few thoughts and realizations on this verse, and then we'll open it up. And Jai Nitai Prabhu, great to see you as well there in the temple room. So I'll open it up for some questions and comments as well, and we'll make sure we give time for that. So I wanted to kind of keep it on the theme of this verse, and then also around the theme of kind of Sudama and Krishna's pastimes, and then also with the theme of Thanksgiving and this day of giving gratitude. Actually, in spiritual life, every day is Thanksgiving, right? If we think about it, there's so much to be grateful for in our spiritual path, and to our Guru Parampara, and all the blessings that are coming our way. But this day particularly, especially in the USA, it's considered a very auspicious day of giving gratitude. And this concept of giving gratitude is both important psychologically, but also particularly spiritually for all of us. Because gratitude really is the foundation of love. Gratitude is the foundation of love. And where there's gratitude, love can exist. And where we don't have gratitude, it's very hard for there to be the flow of love. Really think about it. And I was doing some research before today's class, and there's been so many studies done, even from from a purely psychological perspective, and we'll go deeper than that, of course. But how when we're grateful, it can really boost our well-being, our physical well-being, our emotional well-being, and then particularly our spiritual well-being. It's really important. And also from a spiritual perspective, it's really hard to actually, there's some research done that when we feel grateful, deeply actually grateful in our heart, genuinely, it's actually hard to feel any other emotion that can be kind of harming us or hurting us. So for example, when we're dealing with our anarthas, it's hard to be grateful and feel envious of someone, right? It's hard to be feeling false pride and being grateful, right? It's hard to be angry at someone and also grateful to them, right? Those are hard things to do, and so we want to cultivate this quality of gratitude. I want everyone to kind of think about that as we go through our class. And this pastime of the Sudama Brahman and Krishna, we won't go into the entire story because we still have quite a bit to go in this chapter and the next chapter as well of Srimad Bhagavatam. So we won't get ahead of ourselves, and we'll kind of save some thoughts for other speakers to share. But this pastime in itself is a very powerful example of gratitude, both from Sudama and his side, and then Krishna's side as well. Very beautiful pastime. And just as the way of background, I think everyone is familiar, but if you're not familiar with some of the background of the story, Sudama was a very impoverished Brahmin who lived with his wife and his children. And, he was a grihastha, had his family. And previously, Krishna and Sudama studied together at the school of Sandipani Muni. And despite their kind of big gap in their socioeconomic status, if you will, where Krishna was from the royal order, right, part of the Yadu Vamsa, and you have Sudama as an impoverished Brahmin, coming in and studying together. They became the best of friends at this Gurukul, and they shared many memories together as well. Many memories, and it goes into this chapter, in the next chapter as well, where Krishna and Sudama are discussing their memories as very close, intimate friends. And then they went their separate ways, right? Life kind of takes us our separate ways, and they did not speak to each other for many years. So the context of these verses is that Sudama's wife, who is also a very elevated devotee, by the way, is thinking, um, perhaps go see Krishna, right? There's only auspiciousness that can come out of visiting Krishna, whether there's material prosperity, but really getting the real shelter of Krishna's lotus feet, right? That there will be only auspiciousness. There's only positivity, and we can see in spiritual life there's only gain, right? There's no loss or diminution. There's only gain. So she's encouraging him in this way. And the verse uses this specific Sanskrit to describe Sudama, right, as Mahabhaga, or someone who's very fortunate, right? Vasudeva Prabhu made this point yesterday, and I really liked it. He said that how many people can really count themselves as Krishna's intimate friend, as his intimate friend? It's very few people, right, that can actually say that they have that relationship with Krishna. And so therefore he's called as Mahabhaga, as a very fortunate person. And so so he's being encouraged by his wife to go to see Krishna in Dwarka and to get his darshan, to be seen by him and to see him, which is very auspicious. Um, and I was thinking that, Sudama represents many things and he embodies so many qualities so powerfully. And by the way, Anand Bihari Prabhu, there are some people in the waiting room trying to get into the class. So if you can just let them in, that'd be wonderful. Thank you. So I was thinking that Sudama embodies and represents many different qualities of a devotee, but particularly when we think about Thanksgiving and we think about gratitude, Sudama really represents this unflinching faith in Krishna in the face of the anxieties of this world. There's many different anxieties from the moment that we're born till we leave, right? We're all facing anxieties. No matter kind of who you are, how much money you have, how much wealth you have, how much resources you have, there's always a struggle for existence in this world. And we can see Sudama is struggling to maintain his family, which is also an important duty of a grihastha. Um, but he isn't thinking, if we think about kind of having an ungrateful mindset, and I want us to all think about ourselves in this because we're working on our own heart and mind in our own spiritual development. Sudama could be thinking and be ungrateful and say, here I am as a very poor Brahmana, struggling to maintain my family life. And Krishna is this, ruler. He's famous, he's wealthy, he's renowned. He has the palaces at Dwarka, he's the king. Why is he not helping me whatsoever? Right? Why is he not giving something my way? Right? Throw a little some my way, right? He could be thinking like that. But Sudama is not thinking like that because he's a pure devotee. And actually, he has no envy toward Krishna in any way, shape, or form, and has so much love for him and so much gratitude for whatever was coming his way, whatever he's being given by Krishna. And we see this even in kind of to draw kind of a modern day example, and I grew up playing many sports and loving sports, but you kind of see this example sometimes in the sports and the professional athletic world where a young athlete comes across, become very good at their craft and their sport, they become very renowned, and they get these major deals, many, kind of lucrative deals, and they become very wealthy overnight, right? Sometimes they have 50 million, 100 million, whatever the case might be, overnight. And it can be very challenging for them to deal with this sort of fame and additional wealth that comes their way, not necessarily just because of the wealth, but because of the people that feel like they're entitled to that, right? You always hear these stories where, someone from their past, a friend or a family member will come and say, "Hey, I deserve some of that. I did this for you this at this point. Please give me, 10%, 15%, 5%, 50%, right, of that." They're come demanding their share for what they did for this person. So we can see there's an entitlement that can arise. And what's interesting is that when we feel entitled in our devotional life, in our relationships, it really destroys gratitude. Really destroys gratitude. Entitlement and gratitude cannot exist together. When we think we deserve a position, we deserve respect from others and admiration and all of those things, we cannot really have gratitude in our heart. And so I was thinking that there's kind of two ways, and Sudama represents this so powerfully, to kind of deal with these anxieties of living, right? Because as we mentioned, regardless of if we are, the most famous person on earth and really wealthy, or Sudama, who's an impoverished Brahmin, living in a village, trying to provide for his family, we still have to deal with the anxieties of everyday life. And particularly, those anxieties are at the very basic, there are birth, old age, disease, and death, right? No matter how many resources you have, we cannot avoid these four fundamental problems, right? But even in between these, there's so many things going on in life, whether it's our relationships, whether it's our health challenges, whether it's financial challenges at times, right? Our job, career, so many different things that can create anxiety. Or our family life sometimes can create some anxiety. There's the kind of this natural inborn anxiety that we're all dealing with. And there's two ways to really deal with that. There's many ways, but there are kind of two fundamental ways that we see in this world. The first way is that we um, try to come toward it with a material solution. We deal with this anxiety with a material solution, and that is through accumulation of goods and resources. And so we're accumulating things, and we see that this is kind of the natural state of this world in many cases, where we're trying to acquire degrees and we're trying to acquire money and jobs and possessions and people. And if we're really honest, a lot of that acquiring and accumulation is about kind of guarding ourselves from this anxiety that we're feeling of living in this world, of this struggle for existence, right? The struggle for existence that's there. And the second way that we can deal with this anxiety, with the struggle for existence, is to rely on Krishna. And we can see Sudama is embodying this to the highest level, where we're not hankering so much for accumulating, for getting material possessions and people and money and jobs and degrees and all those things, but we're relying on what Krishna gives us, and we're trusting what he gives us as enough, as part of our relationship with him and the blessings that we're receiving. And I want to make a disclaimer here because sometimes we kind of use these pastimes to say, okay, money is bad, or material progress is bad, right? We're not saying that at all, right? There's in this struggle for existence, that certainly is an aspect of living and is important, right? So, for example, for even Sudama and his wife, they're thinking about, okay, how do we provide for our family? How do we provide for our children? Um, so certainly doing that, and even for our service, right? The more that we have, the more that we can give. So certainly it's not a bad thing. And we should be always intelligent. Srila Prabhupada always encouraged his disciples to be very intelligent, right? When he asked his disciples, how will this movement continue? They brought up many different points. And I believe, and I hope I'm not getting this wrong. So they said, through devotion, through this, through that. And he said, yes, but no, it will go on through intelligence and organization. right? So we should be mindful of that as well. But we don't want to get overly fixated on accumulating on this material side, because then what happens, it's never enough, right? It's never enough. We get one thing, we get that one job, we get that one car. Like, okay, how can I get the second car, right? How can I get the third, the fourth? I got one house, how can I get the bigger house, right? And so sometimes we can get so stuck in this accumulation that we forget the point, the essence of life, which is actually self-realization and to realize our relationship with God, with Krishna. So I kind of wanted just to wrap that point up where we can see Sudama, who's very actually peaceful, even though he's not given very much in his life, he's very peaceful with what he's been given. And his wife is encouraging him to go see Krishna because there's auspiciousness in seeing Krishna and having his darshan. But himself, he's actually not so eager or hankering, right, to see Krishna, because he has so much gratitude for what he's been given, even though it's not that much. And we made this point that entitlement and gratitude cannot exist. And we can see that Sudama could have been entitled if he wanted to be. That, oh, Krishna is one of my closest friends, and he hasn't given me anything, or I'd like to get something from him. But actually, he's not that because he has no material desires in his heart. He's actually a pure Vaishnava. And then I also want to make a point really quickly around gratitude and how that's important, and also the quality of love that we're sharing in our relationships. At the risk of kind of jumping ahead here, I was reading the next chapter, which goes into this pastime even further. And I wanted to highlight one verse that I really liked in text 3, and I won't go into all of it to kind of not ruin the plot details, of course. Um, but in text 3, Krishna, when he's speaking to Sudama, because Sudama eventually goes to Dwarka, and it's a whole story that we'll gradually uncover in these next couple of weeks. Krishna says very, very sweetly to him in text number 3 in chapter 81 of this canto. He says that I regard as great even the smallest gift offered by my devotees in pure love. I regard as great even the smallest gift offered by my devotees in pure love. But even great offerings presented by non-devotees do not please me. Even great offerings presented by non-devotees do not please me. So we can see that gratitude is the foundation of love. But even greater than that is the quality of love that we're offering Krishna is so important. And Krishna is actually hankering for that, right? Here's someone who, speaking of all the resources, Krishna is Bhagavan, right? He has all the opulences, particularly the 6 opulences in full. And he doesn't really need anything. There's really nothing we can give Krishna that he doesn't have already from a material possessions perspective, or in any which way. But actually, Krishna is looking for our love, our heart. And he's actually really waiting for that, for each soul to turn toward him and to share that relationship of love. And one of my favorite pastimes for this that I wanted to share is the story in the Mahabharata of Vidura and Krishna and Duryodhana. It's a very interesting and wonderful story that I think really exemplifies this point of loving gratitude and relationships based on gratitude and love. Uh, when the Mahabharata war was just very soon to commence, things had very much escalated on both sides. And those who are not familiar with the Mahabharata, it was an epic that took place 5,000 years ago when Krishna was still actually on the planet. And so kind of around the time of some of these pastimes actually that we're going through in the 10th canto. And there was 2 sides that were part of the same family, if you will, the Pandavas and the Kauravas. And things had escalated, and the Kauravas had, particularly Duryodhana, who was the son of the blind king Dhritarashtra, he had a lot of hate, a lot of envy toward the Pandavas, the sons of Pandu, these 5 boys who were kings, and he stole their kingdom away from them, essentially. And they were trying to find compromises in many different ways to try to figure out how they can rule, and kind of coexist together with the Kauravas. And they were willing to compromise in so many ways. right? And say, okay, we'll just take five villages. Even give us five villages to rule. And Duryodhana said that wouldn't give you even kind of the amount of land that could fit in kind of a needle, right? The eye of a needle, if you will. Um, and so Krishna went before the war started. Krishna said, "Let me try one more time to try to help kind of calm this conflict down because the effects of this conflict would be kind of devastating, right? Because um, each side was pulling support from all the Kshatriyas, all the kings and the warriors around the world. And so Krishna knew that this was going to be deadly, right? For all, and this was part of the divine plan. But Krishna said, let me try to avoid this conflict if possible. And so Krishna comes from Dwarka and he comes to Hastinapur, which is based in Old Delhi, modern day. And very nice story. It's one of my favorite stories where he comes and Duryodhan, he actually very much wants the conflict to happen, right? Because he wants to actually kill the Pandavas. He wants his revenge for all the slights and all the insecurities that he feels like he's had to endure through through the with the Pandavas and the hate that he has for them. And so when he comes, when Krishna comes, Duryodhana and his minions, they kind of hatch a plan that we're going to treat Krishna with so much respect and love, and we're going to kind of manipulate him. We understand his agenda that he wants to create peace, but we don't want peace. We want to antagonize the Pandavas and create war. So we'll kind of, respect him. We'll treat him really nicely, and then we'll kind of get him to back off, right, from this proposal, essentially, and try to manipulate his thought process. And so Krishna comes to Hastinapur, and Duryodhana has a very lavish ceremony. He, washes his feet and has the most opulent foodstuffs made. And he tells Krishna that Krishna, you can stay with us in the palace, and not even my palace. You can stay in my brother's palace, Dushashan, and his palace is even greater. It's one of the most it's the greatest piece of work in this kingdom, actually. So you can stay there. And it's very interesting. Krishna responds to him very calmly. And he says that actually I prefer to stay with Vidura. And Vidura was the half brother of Dhritarashtra, and due to his upbringing and his origin, his birth, he was kind of considered not kind of he was considered kind of lower than all the other kings and all the other Kshatriyas that were present. So he's kind of always treated very poorly. And so Krishna said, I'd actually rather stay with him and his family than stay with you. And Duryodhana was very confused. He said, Krishna, we have everything here. We have the best of everything. I mean, Vidura is this kind of lowly, kind of member of the dynasty here. Why don't you stay with us? And Krishna said something very beautiful. He says that it's because you have no love in your heart for me. You you want to do a business transaction with me, and actually, if you have love in your heart, you would listen to me and why I'm here. You actually don't want to listen. You're just doing this for formality purposes to try to manipulate me. There's no real love in your heart. And so, Duryodhana is very much affected because Krishna knows his heart. You can't lie to Krishna. And when he actually goes and stays with Vidura, there's a famous story, and I won't go into all of it, but he stays with Vidura, who has a very simple place, nothing very fancy, nothing to what, kind of the five-star treatment the Kauravas could give him, Duryodhana could give him. And even the story goes that, he goes into Vidura's house and Vidura's wife she was cooking and she gets so overwhelmed that Krishna's coming that she gives him banana peels to eat, actually. And, it's very embarrassing for her. And she's, very affected by that. And Krishna's so joyfully eating those banana peels. And he says that I can feel the love in this food that you've prepared for me versus anything that they could prepare, even if it was the most opulent dish or item. And so, it's a longer story, but I'm just kind of abridging it here. And it's one of my favorite ones where, again, we can see that Krishna has everything, but he's looking for the quality of love that we want to share. And we can see in the example of Sudama that he really brings together these wonderful qualities. And particularly, the three qualities that melt the Lord's heart that Sudama really embodies, and you can see this very clearly throughout this pastime. is humility, devotion, and a genuine sincerity, right? So we can continue to hone those qualities where we have humility. And humility, again, if gratitude is the foundation for all of these qualities, right? We can't really be humble without being grateful. Devotion, right? We're devoted when we feel grateful to someone. And then a genuine sincerity that occurs in our heart to want to serve. Again, born from gratitude as well. And those qualities really melt the heart of the Lord. And we'll see that play out with this pastime. And lastly, just want to kind of share this point that um, everyone's looking for wealth in this world, some sort of secret sauce or some sort of recipe or thing, something that can get them ahead, some sort of edge. And as we think about gratitude, what's our real wealth, right? What's our real wealth? Sudama is going, and his wife is saying, okay, it's not very desirable, but maybe Krishna will bestow you some wealth. The word that's used in this verse is artha, right? Artha, wealth. And another word for wealth is dhan or dana as well. And I was just remembering last night when I was doing some preparation for this class, this very famous bhajan by Srila Narottam Das Thakur, where he says, Golokera prema dhan, harinam sankirtan. So the real wealth of Goloka, of the spiritual world, is the name of Krishna. And so we have access, right? So Sudama was able to go to Dwarka. We're able to go to the Bhakti Center, right? And see Radha Muralidhar. What's our real wealth is the name of Krishna, right? Even if we can't physically go and see the deity, we always have the name. And it's said that in the name are imbued all the qualities of the Lord and the connection to Krishna, right, as well. And so I wanted to kind of end there. I brought up a couple of different points, and I want to be mindful of time and open it up for any comments or questions. But we talked about kind of the pastime of Sudama and Krishna. We talked about how even from a psychological perspective, there's been um, a lot of studies and research done on gratitude and how that's good for our mental health, our emotional health, our spiritual health. We talked about some background between the Sudama and Krishna and how they were friends from their Gurukul days, and how they went their separate ways and how they live very different lives. And we talked about also how the anxiety of living in this world, we're all dealing with that from a basic level of birth, old age, disease, and death. And often to deal with that from the material kind of point of view, the solution, if you will, which is not really a solution, is accumulation, right, of things. And we can spend our whole life doing that. And then from a spiritual perspective, we can rely on Krishna, what Krishna's given us. And then we talked about kind of the quality of our gratitude and our love is also really important. When we brought the story of Vidura and Duryodhan, as well with Krishna, to kind of show how Krishna is actually looking for our love, even though he has everything. And then everything auspicious comes from that, actually. So I wanted to wrap up there and open it up for any questions, comments, thoughts, concerns. Haribol.
Thank you, Anuj. Prabhu, wonderful class. We count what Krishna gives us as enough. That's a major takeaway for me personally. Just wanted to reflect that back to you, Anuj Prabhu. Okay, dear devotees, please. Amrita Kishore, is that a question? No. It's service. It's the Pujari room service. Okay. Anyone? Please. If Prashant, go ahead.
So wonderful class, great thoughts. I really like Sudama's story and how he wasn't hankering for anything extra beyond what would come in its own way. Now he was obviously in the highest most sattva gun, but in tamas gun also you could have the same thing that whatever will come my way, I will just do it. I will not do any effort. And sometimes, like even like in Gita, there are verses that you need to do your job, even if you see defects in it. In chapter 18, like even if you see defects in it, you still need to do it and don't do somebody else's. I was wondering, especially when you have a corporate job, how do you balance not hankering with laziness or extreme ambition? Like there's some confusion sometimes about let whatever comes my way, let it come my way.
That's a great question. Thank you, Prashant Prabhu. Thank you for that question. Also, just want to acknowledge some of the devotees on here. I heard Arjuna Prabhu's name mentioned. My obeisances to you. And also my father's on here as well. So I just wanted to acknowledge him, Devakinandan, Dad, Prabhu. So thank you for coming. To your question, yeah, it's a great point. I think that from my perspective and having, I guess, worked a corporate job the last 13 or so years myself in New York City and kind of beyond, um, I think that's a great question. I think that the way I look at it is that there's a simple quote that we should work as though the results are all up to us and pray as though the everything is up to Krishna, knowing that everything is up to Krishna. And I think that's a good mantra to have, in my opinion. And I think that we should be very ambitious if it's in our nature. Anything that's in our nature can be used to serve Krishna. And so if it's in our nature to be ambitious, and to be very driven, then we should definitely use that in service. There's actually a really nice pastime that Hari Prasad Prabhu, who I think most of you are familiar with, we were just talking last week. We were at an event, and he shared a really nice pastime of Srila Prabhupada, that in this context. I'll try to keep it short. And I don't know the exact reference, so my apologies here. But I believe the devotees, when this is in the 1970s, were looking for a property. I think it was somewhere in Canada, if you will, maybe Toronto or Montreal, somewhere along that nature, along that point. And the devotees asked Srila Prabhupada, and the property was quite nice. It was a very kind of affluent property, but it was going to be very expensive, and it was definitely a stretch financially for the devotees at that time, right? And so this was a temple, potential temple or preaching site. And they asked Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, hey, should we get this? Right? Is this something that's worth doing? And Prabhupada said, why should we take on anxiety? Right? Why should we simply anxiety? Right? Why should we take on some more anxiety? Having this big project and all these, then you have the maintenance, the mortgage, and the bills that are coming. There's so much pressure on the devotees. And then they were speaking and over, a few weeks, and they mentioned that Srila Prabhupada, this venue is incredibly well located. It's a nice property. We can do a lot with this, right? We can really serve and share. They kind of shared the vision with Srila Prabhupada, right? And Srila Prabhupada got very excited by that vision. And he said, get the property immediately, right? Get the property. And the devotee said, "Well, Prabhupada, you were saying that there's a lot of anxiety. Why should we take on that anxiety? Right? We're also worried about that." And Srila Prabhupada said, "No, there must be anxiety. There must be anxiety. Right? To serve Krishna, there must be anxiety." And so we can see that a pure devotee like Srila Prabhupada, when he was seeing that, what's the prospect of this? Is there a prospect? When he was seeing the vision, he became very excited initially, for kind of if there was no vision behind it, then why take on that, right? That anxiety. But if there's a vision, we need to take on some of that anxiety to also serve. And so I hope that answers your question, that we can use our nature. We should use it. We should be ambitious to the highest degree if that's part of what we're capable of and our skill set. We should also know that when we're kind of at the max of our skill set, right, as well, and know that if we're hurting our health, we're hurting people around us in trying to serve sometimes, then okay, we need to take a little bit of a step back and reevaluate. And Krishna also helps. He kind of gives you signs, and he also helps us build our capacity, right? So what we can do today, maybe in 10 years we can do even more, right? And so all those things need to be balanced and looked at. But yeah, we should always be ambitious if that's in our nature, to do that and serve and be anxious to serve Krishna.
Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
There you go. Thank you. Wonderful question.
Bhima Prabhu. Bhima Prabhu is putting us in anxiety. Are you driving, Bhima Prabhu?
No, sorry about that. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right. I just wanted to make two quick statements. Thank you, Prabhu. Anuj, you have a wide breadth of knowledge that you synthesized everything in together. So not only did Sudama Brahman meet Krishna, and shy away from asking for anything from Krishna. I find this, at least for myself, this is one of these secret favorite verses of all householders that somehow Krishna, if as long as I don't ask for it, Krishna knows what I need because the wife is telling me what I need. So we sort of like leave it to Krishna to give us what we need, and if we get it, to do our best, like Sudama, to turn it around in Krishna's service. So I just wanted to say one thing. There's no loss or diminution on this path, Prabhu. You mentioned that. Um, but I think everyone should understand that there might not be diminution, but there will be demolition. If you are holding on to anything material in this world, and simultaneously you are sincere in your quest, your yearning to become Krishna conscious, Krishna will demolish. Krishna will demolish. He will smash those material things right in front of you, like a child, like throwing down a vase, smash all at your feet, can't be put back together again. So we can have faith and be very happy about no loss or diminution on this path, but get ready for the demolition. Get ready. Hare Krishna.
Absolutely, Prabhu. Yeah, bhakti is a gradual demolition of everything that's temporary, and sometimes a quick demolition, as well. So, yeah, absolutely true. And I just want to add one point to Prashant Prabhu's question. Actually, just I was thinking as Bhima Prabhu was sharing that, yeah, this other point as well as, and I feel like this is an important point for our community and in my own life, trying to practice this as well. Not that it's perfect, of course, but sometimes we do use the Krishna's plan, kind of as a way to be lazy, right? Or to not take responsibility for our decisions and choices, right? So that's also an important kind of other side of it, where of course we want to be open and we know ultimately it's Krishna's plan that's happening. At the same time, we should be taking on that anxiety, as Srila Prabhupada says, right? There must be anxiety. We should be eager to serve and to challenge ourselves as much as possible and get out of our comfort zone. Sometimes I see in our communities that, we can kind of get into this place of just, coasting a little bit, right? And we're making bad decisions and then saying, well, it's Krishna's plan, that I made this bad decision. No, we should take responsibility of that we made this decision, not to blame Krishna on that or that he needs to come just save us from everything. That's kind of getting into a little bit of laziness, a little bit of bargaining, a little bit of everything, right? So we should be the most responsible that we can be, and then leave it up to Krishna to help guide us through Guru and Krishna. So important point. And we'll take darshan and we can take some other comments and questions, right, Anand Bihar Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu. Yes, thank you. Darshan time, cameras, please, if you can, dear devotees.
Speak of our spiritual master.
Hare Krishna, welcome to the Afterglow. Thank you, Anuj Prabhu, for staying over time with us. We have something in the chat. Prashant Prabhu is asking about that mantra for corporate world that you shared. Is it coming from Prabhupada originally? Wasn't it Prabhupada who said, externally we act like everything depends on us, but internally we understand that it's up to Krishna? Isn't that from Prabhupada? It'll be my homework. I'll look that up.
Yeah, you can look that up. I'm not 100% sure. Adipurush, I don't know if he's saying something, but I've heard it in different contexts. So definitely some variation of that. So, but I put the mantra that I had shared in chat as well.
Cool. Thank you, Prabhu. Okay, questions, dear devotees, questions. I think Devakinandan Prabhu had his hand raised. Is he still here? Devakinandan. Okay, maybe he'll be back.
Hare Krishna.
Oh, there he is. Okay.
People.
Yeah, I wanted to thank Bhakti Center community for engaging so many devotees in Krishna service through deity worship, through kirtans, through Srimad Bhagavatams. On today's class, one point that's striking to me, Sudama's, his grateful heart in a relationship we see that not, sometimes we're not very sensitive to the desire of our partners, our well-wishers. And here we see that Sudama himself, he wasn't so keen of asking anything from Krishna, but he noticed year after year after year the sacrifices of his wife, that she was living in utter poverty. They had holes in the roof, nothing to eat. She would beg every day from the neighbors to get something to eat. So this is his Sudama's way of paying back to the sacrifices of his wife. That he's saying, okay, I don't want to go and ask Krishna anything. He's my Suhridam Sarvabhutanam. He's my friend from the heart. So the heart friend, you don't ask for anything. But to fulfill the desire and the plight of his wife, and reciprocate with her sacrifices that she has done for the family, he agreed to go. So on a Thanksgiving Day, I'm thinking that's a wonderful lesson for me, that I should also hear my partner's voice, sometime spoken, sometime unspoken. Generally, that unspoken voice is very important to hear and do something with it. So I thought, let me share that. Thank you.
Yeah, really nice point, Dad. Yeah, so important that sometimes we're sensitive toward, toward Guru and our devotional service and Krishna and all the things we need to do for the community, but then how are we doing that in our relationships as well, right? So and then extending that out, it's important for all of us to think about. Nice point.
Yeah, that was a very mature perspective on things. Devakinandan Prabhu, thank you. Yeah, most of the plights that are coming from our spouse are unspoken, so we should be really sensitive to them. Thank you for emphasizing that,
Sounds like you're
Prabhu.
speaking from experience, Prabhu.
Yeah. If the plight is spoken, then you missed
You're in
it.
trouble.
Yeah. Yeah.
Haribo.
Thank you. And Devakinandan Prabhu answered the question that I had. My question was, we understand as bhakti yogis that the greatest gift is the love of God. So why then Krishna didn't just send him back saying, the greatest gift, the greatest treasure is love of God. So why don't you go back to your hut and I'll go back to my palace? Why did Krishna give him a palace and the riches? So, but then Devakinandan Prabhu said that Krishna is trying to reciprocate with the plight of the wife of that devotee right there. So thank you. Would you like to speak on that, Anuj Prabhu? Why did Krishna give him a castle instead of just sending him back?
Yeah. Well, Krishna also just to add, I would say Krishna saw that he wasn't demanding that because we can't demand. Krishna doesn't like that. That's not the mood of love. When you're demanding, forcing, right, someone, it disrupts the flow of love. Um, so I think that definitely to reciprocate with Sudama's wife, with Sudama and his family, he saw that there was not a demand, there was such a humility, right? And we go later into the story and we see the rice, and he brings this rice to Krishna, and we'll go into that. So Krishna's very satisfied by that as well. So all of that is there. I also, one thing I have felt in my life and spiritual life and seen in my experience, is that I find that Krishna gives things to people when they're ready for it, actually. So sometimes people say, like, I want, such and such thing. I want this much wealth, or I want this much success, material things even. And actually, can we handle that without changing, right? Without breaking down, without losing our foundation? Sometimes, they say that change is hard, like, losing someone, the death of a loved one, or losing a job. And those are kind of considered in some ways those harder changes. But also some of the positive changes that people, pray for from a material perspective, or can be actually very challenging changes, as well. And so I was actually doing there's a line in the purport for the second verse, um, that says, which I was doing kind of some research on. It's nice where they're talking about wealth, and it says that the reason for kind of that wealth, and this material prosperity is not so important is that in the long run it gives no real satisfaction, right? And I was doing this study around. I've seen this with some of the work I was doing for coaching, but there was a study done around lottery winners, for people who win the lottery, right? Mega millions, if you will. And they kind of did this study, and there are multiple studies, so they're kind of conflicting in some ways. But a lot of the studies showed they kind of were like, okay, how do people react in their life, right? When they win something. And actually, it's very interesting that when you win when you kind of go from nothing to that much amount of wealth, it's actually not the most pleasant experience, right? Because people report feeling paranoid, right? Of like, okay, who's going to take this from me, right? So the anxiety starts in a different way, right? How do I protect this? How do I, kind of hide and no one knows that I actually won and kind of disappear from the scene? Um, or like, why did I even win, right? This and stuff like that. So, and then what's interesting is they showed that while it created kind of a temporary spike in happiness, right? Over some time, over months and years, people returned to their baseline level, actual happiness. Because what happens is you get used to that, even if you made 100 million or let's say whatever, and you get taxed but you come back and your lifestyle might have increased, but your problems are still your problem in many ways, right? And so anyway, it's interesting. And in Bhakti Yoga, we're working on that baseline, right? We're working on that baseline, working on our heart. So no matter what is coming, if it's materially going well, if it's not so going so well, we still have a connection to Krishna. But yeah, anyway, I personally find that Krishna gives us what we can handle. And sometimes when we don't get something, it's actually a good thing because it could actually be not so good for us in some ways if we got that thing. And Krishna's working on making sure we get the right things at the right times, especially if we're very sensitive to stay connected to him and his devotees. That's been my experience at least.
Thank you, Anuj Prabhu. So, Bhima Prabhu, if you ever get rich, do not stop coming to morning class every day, please. Okay, Adipusha Prabhu, would you like to speak? Unmute. Can't unmute.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Wonderful class. Such a rich class. So many very strong, clear philosophical points. Not anything I could really contribute. He explained everything very nicely. I could offer a comment. I was thinking yesterday about Rabbi Gilberman. He founded an interfaith seminary here in New York City. He used to speak in the Bhakti Center all the time, bring his disciples in. And he was about 95 years old, funny Jewish rabbi. And he said, I'm so old, I'm going to retire. So he stopped doing his classes. And then he said, I'm praying to Krishna. Give me strength, give me strength. And he said, Krishna said to me, you're not doing anything. Why should I give you strength? So he went back to work again after that, even though he was 95 years old. He said, what's the use of Krishna giving something if you don't know how to get used to it? And then we have this one saying that I find consoling. Lakshmi loves to run and jump in Krishna's arms. Lakshmi loves to run and jump in Krishna. She's a person. Wealth is not just wealth. Lakshmi is Lakshmi. And she's very pleased if when she comes to us that we bring her to Krishna, that it's used in devotional service. And that's perfect and wonderful. And Lakshmi's happy and we're happy and Krishna conscious Lord Chaitanya's movement goes on. Lakshmi loves to run and jump in Krishna's arms. We'll just leave you with that. Oh, glories to Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Anuj Prabhu, concluding remarks, please. Let's finish it off.
No, just grateful. Thank you, Adi Prabhu. I love how you bring it together. Also, your prayers in the beginning, Shri Guru Charana Padma is always so. It's like a nourishing balm to the soul when I sign in and hear that right before class. So thank you. And yeah, we have so much to learn on this day of Thanksgiving about gratitude from Sudama. I think it's actually one of the best pastimes for this actually, because we can see that he has so much gratitude for Krishna that there's not even a desire to ask for more. So maybe we can't we can't maybe imitate that, but we can follow in the footsteps of these type of souls.
Thank you. Thank you, Prabhu. Wonderful class.
Yeah, and I want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving and a wonderful next few days also as well. If you're
Thank you.
doing anything for that, or celebrating.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Annabelle, where is Isaiah? Where's your brother? Isaiah,
Everybody
come over.
get demolished on Thanksgiving, right? Everybody go out and get demolished. Krishna will take care of everything. He's your bartender. He will demolish you.
Thank you, Bhima Prabhu. Bhima Prabhu always interjects with hopeful messages, hopeful and sobering messages.
Sobering messages. Great to see you, Jamunajay, by the way, as well. And thank you
Yeah,
for
Jamuna Jai, why don't you speak? Unmute yourself. While Isaiah's getting ready. Oh, she frozen. That's what ecstasy
it's
looks
raining
like.
also quite a bit. I see the umbrella.
Yeah. Oh, I just came out of the subway, so I was in and out, but I was really appreciating class. It's a great way to spend a very busy train ride. But I really, it's something I think about a lot, the connection between entitlement and gratitude. And as you say, they cannot exist in the same time. And Gurudev always says, if you're entitled, you can never be happy. If you're entitled, you can never experience love. And we see that he uses the example of the spoiled child. You can give the child the world, but if they're entitled, they cannot receive the love. And then a child that has nothing can receive the parent's love. And so I think of that often, like us. If we're entitled, we cannot perceive Krishna's love. And a grateful heart is a happy heart is a soft heart. So I really love when you were expressing that, because it's something I think about a lot. So thank you so much, Anuj.
Thank you. Yeah, it reminds me of the quote that Maharaj shares often is the expectation is the root of all heartache, I believe.
Yes, yeah.
The entitlement. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, Annabelle, where is he?
Out to see that thing, yeah.
You don't know. Karen, please bring Isaiah. Bring him on. Oh, there he is. Okay, unmute.
Got an apron? Huh?
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving, dear devotees. Hari Bol.